Tonight, the legend returns.
Derek Zoolander.
Zoolander.
Why didn't we do this sooner?
I miss not knowing things with you.
Ben Stiller.
We're back.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah!
Will Ferrell.
It's like a dream, but for real.
Penelope Cruz and Kristen Wiig.
I'm Milesy.
Spend Valentine's Day with Zoolander.
It's like a blind date, only neither of us is blind. Unless you are blind, in which case you can't hear my voice anyway.
Zoolander 2, directed by Ben Stiller, starts tonight at 7 p.m. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
Practice not the religion of truth. It is those who have been
give 'em the bush till they pay the tribute out of hand and have been humble. 1929 said so and have been humble. 1929 said so, said so, said so. It said and have been humble. 1929 said so, said so, said so, said so. And have been humble.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to RFB Radio, courtesy of Red Fox Radio, heard on High Plains Talk Radio, SHR Media, Spreaker, and YouTube. We're your hosts. I'm Cal Fritzy, and that dapper gent who joins me is Mr. Tim Borton. Hi, Tim. How are you today?
Well, good evening, Cal. I'm unbelievably well, and how are you tonight?
As usual, I'm infidelly fine.
I
and
do
I think
hope
my
you're not
cat
going
is
to.
too.
Oh, good. Well, that's good news. What is it about your cat that makes it worthy of attention tonight?
Every time I do the Monday show, and Miko hears the 929 song, she's right up here on my desk. So I think I have an infidelity fine cat as well.
Yeah. That's nothing better than a counter-jihad orientated pussy. That's what I say. I dare say. Oh, never mind. Let's not go down that route. Aren't you going to ask me about the weather today, Kel?
Well, actually, I'm going to ask Confucius a question. Confucius.
When in hole, why not stop digging? Yes, good idea. Well, as you're obviously not going to ask me about the weather, I'm going to have to tell you about it anyway. Because
Jenna is listening, and she just she spit out her beverage.
Yes, indeed. Well, of course, as you know, or as you may know across the pond, no self-respecting radio host over on this side of the pond in England would start off the show by talking about anything other than the weather. Last week we were talking about Storm Henry, and we were all in general agreement that this was a really wimpy-sounding storm, the kind of storm that would get taken around the back of the bike sheds and beaten up by the bigger storms. Oh yeah, but now we've got Storm Imogen. And Storm Imogen is really giving us a good old pasting as we speak. The wind is blowing outside. The dustbin lids are rattling, and it's pretty dire. But I mean, Storm Imogen. I mean, it has got a bit more class than Storm Henry. You think Storm Imogen sounds like the kind of storm that has just graduated from Cheltenham Ladies College. Storm Imogen, and you can imagine her blowing into town and saying, "Do you mind, my good man? I'm trying to have a good old."
Let me adjust my petticoats before I inundate you with my.
That's exactly right, Kel. That's exactly right. So, yeah, Storm Imogen is what we have this week, and definite improvement on Storm Henry. As I say, I think they give these storms these little wimpy names in the hope that they'll slink off into oblivion. You know, oh my God, they've given me a bad name. I'm just not going to blow and huff and puff anymore. I'm just going to disappear and let another more classy storm take over, and that's what we have. We've got Storm Imogen, the most classy storm we have had this year, bar none.
Where do your storms come from? And in
Storm Factory, Cal.
Central
I thought everybody knew that. No. Look, am I a meteorologist? No, I'm not. So all you're ever going to get out of me is some is some ridiculous guesses. I've no idea how these storms develop. I hear lots of talk about anticyclones and areas of low pressure and high pressure, but not being a meteorologist, it goes largely over my head. But if there's anybody out there who can tell us exactly where Storm Imogen came from, if it wasn't the Cheltenham Ladies
No,
College.
what I mean by that is that in south central Ontario, we tend to get the tail end of hurricane storms in terms of wind and a lot of rain. And Jana's just letting everybody know that Winter Storm Mars is hitting in her neck of the woods. So if you're in that area, folks, just be mindful. But when you have these windstorms, they're tail ends from somewhere, aren't they?
Well, I suppose they are. I mean, obviously, if you're only getting the tail end of these storms in Ontario, somebody hasn't been paying their dues, because we're getting the full force of it here, and that's obviously because we're fully paid up members of the Storm Appreciation Society, and we get the full benefit, blow your hat off down the road kind of storms. If you're not a member of the Storm Appreciation Society, as you obviously aren't in Ontario, you get the tail end of everything. You've been shortchanged by the sound of it.
We've got somebody here who would like to contribute to the storm, to the weather, and that's our very own underground professor. Hey, Brock.
Oi, oi.
Oi, oi. Oi, oi.
All right, Cal. This is real simple. When a mommy storm and a daddy storm love each other, then they make little baby storms.
Oh, very good.
And that's where storms come from.
Oh, good grief. Trust you,
well,
Prof.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest that, but then I thought, well, we haven't reached the 9 o'clock watershed over here, so yeah. we don't
you didn't wait
anybody.
for the watershed. You just went right in with infidel pussycats, and I'm being polite with that one.
Yes, okay, fair enough, Cal. You caught me out there. That's fair enough. Good to hear you, Prof. What's been happening in your neck of the woods?
Oh, been quiet, especially in my audience lately. I've just been plodding along. If you didn't hear my show yesterday, then you missed an awesome Michael Vick moment when my two shepherds, got into a big fight.
Oh, Prof.
Yeah, they knocked over a bookshelf and all kinds of stuff. I mean, they went after each other.
It was fur flying everywhere. I could hear it. Folks, when Prof was doing his show last night, as you know, Prof adopts puppy dogs, and he has some foster dogs staying with him. And, some of them decided to get into a Donnybrook. And poor Prof, oh, my gosh, you had to leave the mic and get out of there and break it up. Oh.
Yeah, that was kind of scary, too. And the fight was over 2 bags of dog food and tossed them on the floor and was going to put them into the airtight container after the show. So they were fighting over the bags and who could be next to it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that just blew my mind. I've never seen dogs.
A territorial war going on. Well, something happened with Miko and my dog, Dobby Amba, last night. Dobby Amba has figured out that I keep little dog treats about, and he wandered into the bedroom to see if he could find one, and Miko the cat was on the bed and took quite the umbrage to Dobby Amba jumping on the bed and gave him quite a swipe. It's like, oh, real cat fight. But, I know, Prof, that was amazing. I could hear it crashing, too. We all could, yeah.
Yeah, that made my hair on my back stand up, wading into that pool.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, let you guys get to the good work you do, and I will sit back and enjoy.
When's your next show, by the way?
Tomorrow, 7 p.m.
Right on. I'll see you there.
I think, allegedly. We're going to do I'm going to talk about the politics of Star Wars, a few things I missed on last night's show, and Darth Sue will show up in her Darth Vader outfit.
Oh, no. Oh, Mandy
For people on Periscope, yes. Mandy Sue's got a Darth Vader outfit, yep.
Mandy Sue's so cute. Oh, I adore that little puppy dog. Oh, she's so cute. Well, you know what? Before we let you go, if you're going to be talking about Star Wars, and of course they have the superheroes, you might want to bring up the latest Superman, who is apparently British.
Yes, that's something that's a trend over here in America. All of our iconic heroes are being portrayed by Australians and Brits.
Yeah.
And you know what? The funniest thing about all that was my getting my head wrapped around it. You guys could imitate the American accent. Because I didn't realize we had an accent. I thought it was,
Hey, Prof, and Tim, what we should do, I noticed that when we have singers from Britain, when they sing, they do sound American. What we should do, Prof, is get some American entertainers together and start singing British Cockney.
Like when we sing.
Tonight. Oh, I cannot do accents, but you get the gist.
You can hear that when we try to sing the Cure songs.
Indeed. Oh, Prof, you are such a hoot. It's great to hear your voice as usual. I'll see you tomorrow night for sure.
All righty. Bye, guys.
Bye, Prof. Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you, Prof.
Oh, it's not a show without a contribution from our Prof. Absolutely. And do listen to the Underground Professor, whether it be on Periscope or on Blog Talk Radio. The man's a hoot. But it is so true, Tim. We were listening to the show last night, and it was a real Donnybrook going on with his foster dogs. It was unreal. I didn't know who was going to come out the winner. I thought for sure we had lost Prof forever. Is Prof coming back? But you know what? You had an equally exciting day.
Well, I did.
On Saturday.
Yeah. I did indeed, Cal. I turned out with about 700 or 800 others to a demonstration in Birmingham organised by Pegida. Now, for those of you who don't know, Pegida started off in Germany. It was organised by a group. I forget what it is in German, but it stands for a patriotic group against the Islamization of Europe or Islamization of the West. I'm sure it sounds much more impressive in German, but my German is not good. So,
des Ablands? Yeah, I hear
well, possibly, yes. And the organisers of Pegida decided that they would coordinate a series of demonstrations at the same time on the same day, which was on Saturday the 6th of February, and we had ours in Birmingham. Now, I didn't know what this was going to turn out like, but it was so close to where I live, I thought I couldn't possibly miss it. And there were people who came from all over the country to take part in this Pegida march, and it actually turned out to be an astounding success in pretty much every respect. One of the things about it was held on an industrial estate. There was a march between Birmingham International Station and a car park on an industrial estate. And while some people might have said, well, that's a little bit out of the way, what sort of impression are we going to make? The surprising thing was that, for one thing, we didn't run into any of the kind of lefty Muslim opposition that we have with other counter-jihad marches. It was a very peaceful march. It was held in more or less complete silence. There was no chanting or singing or anything like that you sometimes get in these demonstrations. And that was actually a great thing because there were the overall impression that gave was of a large group of people all marching in solidarity with one common purpose in mind, which of course is what Pegida is all about. Now, I know that they had a little bit of trouble in some of the other countries. I think in France in particular, there were some riots, and believe it or not, a French general got arrested. He was an ex-commander of the French Foreign Legion, and he'd come out in support of Pegida, and the riot police charged into the Pegida lines, and this French general was one of the people who were arrested. But then in France, they're taking the view that they don't want these demonstrations, and that they actually said initially in France that they weren't going to permit the demonstration, but people came along anyway and held their demonstration in the face of the opposition of the French state. But anyway, that's France. Here in Birmingham, we did things by the book. We applied for and got permission to have the march where we did. It was all very well policed, very well stewarded, and it went off without a hitch. The only disadvantage being that it was absolutely pouring with rain. The rain was almost coming down sideways. It was so cold and wet and windy. But, everybody was really, really cheerful. I spoke to an awful lot of people there. There were a lot of reporters with video cameras and microphones. They were going around taking interviews from people. I had a very interesting chat with a reporter from, I think it was IBT, International Business Times, by the name of Tasmin. Now, Tasmin was a young lady. She was like 6 foot tall and had muscles the size of Bournemouth, and it turned out she was a transgender feminist, and she shoved the microphone in my face and said, what do you think Islam would do with people like me, transgender feminists? And I said, well, what you got to realize is that Islam the only people that are treated well in Islam are Muslim males. They're at the top of the pecking order. Muslim females come second.
No, I thought
non-Muslim
goats came second.
What's that, sorry?
I thought goats came second.
Oh,
Sorry.
goats. Well, obviously goats. Yeah, all right. Muslim females third. Non-Muslims fourth. And, of course, by the time you get down to gay people and transgender, Islam will kill you. You will be thrown off the top of a building if you're lucky. And she was a bit taken aback by this. And, it's almost as if it was a revelation. I mean, I suppose we talk about these things so often, it's not a revelation to us, but it certainly is a revelation to a lot of people. And when I explained that Islam has a very bad track record when it comes to discrimination between various groups, and certainly when it comes to treating people like transgender feminists, there was a distinct look of shock on her face when I explained all this. So I don't know what I'm sure there were other people who were giving the truth about Islam to various reporters that were there, and you would think that some of these would have surfaced in the mainstream media by now and given people a much truer picture of what Islam is really all about. Sadly, of course, we pretty much anticipated that the mainstream media were not going to treat us fairly, and that's how it turned out. We were almost invariably described as anti-Islam hate groups, and they were saying only about 100 to 200 people turned up. It was a complete washout, a total failure, and it's that awful Tommy Robinson was there, and they were trying to smear Pegida by association, because obviously Tommy Robinson at one time was the leader of the EDL. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about Tommy Robinson, I do recommend you buy his book, or beg, steal, or borrow it, preferably buy it. It's called Enemy of the State, and it is an absolutely cracking read. If you can't get it from your local bookstore, do see if you can get it on Kindle, which is where I got mine. I imagine you'd be able to get it on Kindle in the United States and Canada. If not,
yeah, I would imagine so.
Send me an email. Send me $20 by email and or PayPal, and I will get you a copy and send it to you. But it's well worth a read because it chronicles everything that led up to where we are today in a very, very readable way, and it has such a ring of truth about it. And I mean, I'm aware of a lot of the history, but to hear it explained in Tommy Robinson's words is really quite something. But anyway, I mean, he wasn't the only person speaking there. As you may know, the people who are now designated as leader and deputy leader of Pegida are Paul Weston of Liberty GB and Anne Marie Waters of Sharia Watch, respectively. And they were on stage at the end of the march, giving some very eloquent speeches indeed. And one of the I was walking in and around the crowd as this was all going on. I'd been tasked with collecting money in the crowd, believe it or not. And while this was going on, I was listening to the speeches, and they were very, very moving speeches. We had one guy there by the name of Mohammed. I forget what his last name was, but he was an ex-Muslim and a Pakistani, now a Pakistani Christian, and he was giving his account of what it's like being an ex-Muslim in a Muslim community from where he comes from, which I think was in Bradford. And, you know, he fears for his life, and quite understandably as well, because we know from everything that all the research we have done concerning Islam, we know how Islam treats apostates, and basically any Muslim has a license to kill an apostate wherever he finds them. And although the Kufar laws might dictate that they get punished for this, if you kill an apostate in an Islamic country, then no penalty is payable at all. And that's the kind of thing that we're up against. This is why we don't get more support from Muslims, of course, or ex-Muslims, because it's very difficult for them to come out and give their support if they know that they're going to be tracked down and killed, which, you know, or their family might be tracked down and killed. It's a very difficult situation for them to be in. But nevertheless, he gave a very eloquent and very moving speech. And at the end of it all, Tommy Robinson said that the plan was to have a Pegida march every single month during for the foreseeable future, starting in April. So the first Saturday of each month, they're going to be having a march. It's going to be the same location at the moment, starting off at Birmingham International Railway Station, and then a short march to a stage area, which I say a short march, about a mile, I suppose, to the stage area, and then people will give speeches. And what we expect is that when people get to hear about the kind of environment that this march is being conducted in, and hopefully as we get better weather as the year goes on, the numbers should grow and grow, and, you know, hopefully exponentially. But it was an absolutely fantastic day. I met a lot of people that I personally know, which was nice, and I made some new friends as well, and generally a very interesting day indeed. And as far as demonstrations go, I reckon that was really quite successful. There were a few lefties, but they were corralled in at the railway station by the police. I think there was only about 25 to 30 of them, jumping up and down, shouting and screaming. And I think there were a couple of arrests that were made amongst the lefties, but absolutely nobody was arrested from the Pegida group. 700 or 800 people, no arrests whatsoever. It gives the lie to the story that the mainstream media puts around, that Pegida is somehow a violent, far-right, Islamophobic group. No, none of those things are true. We are obviously against Islam, but as far as far right is concerned, we're merely concerned patriots, people who want to see an end to the aggressive, psychopathic political ideology that is Islam, that is infesting our country and generally causing mayhem wherever it goes. We don't want that. We had a perfectly nice country before Islam came along. And it's been allowed to expand to such an extent that it's now a clear and present danger to national security, to law and order, and to the very existence of our civilization. Why should we let that go without a fight? One person who did write about the Pegida demonstration was a friend of mine who runs a website called Fahrenheit211.net. And he pretty much echoes the same comments that I've made. And the point he made a very interesting point, which was this is likely to be, or it could be seen as a turning point in the fight back against Islam, in as much as it's an international movement, which where they're all having their demonstrations on the same day. It gives it a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? A lot more.
Well, while you're looking for that word, I'll let you know that I put the articles from Fahrenheit 211 in the chat room.
Oh, wonderful!
As well as the full coverage of Pegida UK from Saturday, courtesy of it's Rutley. Rutley TV.
Yeah, RT Rutley, the Russian television. That's brilliant. Yeah, he made the point that it's. You could look on it as being comparable with the great speech that was made just before Agincourt by Henry V, the St. Crispin's Day speech, where he made a very rousing patriotic speech just prior to the battle, and the English won the battle extremely decisively afterwards. It's a long speech, and I don't intend to reproduce it all here. But I'll just give you the last 4 lines of it, which are, "And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap whilst any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day." Now, all right, that's only a part of the speech, and if you want the full speech, it's available in Henry V's. Shakespeare's Henry V. It's also available on Wikipedia if you wanted to have a look at St. Crispin's Day speech. If you Google that, you'll find it. But, it could really be as important as that. There has to be a turning point at some point where we stand up and say, no more, we're not going to stand for this anymore. And I like to think that this could actually be the start of it. But that was my view of the day, Kel, and I was very glad and very honoured to be there.
Now, I understand that these are going to be static demos once a month in Birmingham. And, of course, you will be walking down the street, as it were, but it's going to be a silent march, and then you'll end up at a static point every month now in Birmingham?
Well, it's usual. If you have a static demonstration, then there isn't a march. Okay, it's just
what I mean
is
that
gather
you
together at a
somewhere.
Point.
You're not marching in and out of Birmingham. You're marching to a gathering site, is what I mean.
Well, we are, yes, and doing it the way we're doing it is, I think, was actually quite an inspired choice. I have to say, I had my misgivings when I first heard that it was going to be at Birmingham International Station, and then we were marching down to a point on an industrial estate. But it actually turned out to be quite an inspired choice because we didn't get the interruptions from the violent lefties and the violent Muslims that we might otherwise have gotten. We had a very robust police presence. And to be fair, the police were very laid back about the whole thing, very all smiling and polite and, well, you know, you just the kind of thing you want to see. If you're going to go on a demo and, you know, maybe take your family next time, I think you can be assured that you're going to have a really good experience. So all in all, I haven't got a single negative thing to say about Saturday, apart from the rain. But, you know, there's nothing much we can do about that.
And we're moving on in a moment. But we do want to share something with you. Now, we're not making any promises, but at Patriots for Britain, heard Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Paul Weston might be joining the program. But we're not making any promises. It's tentative. So please, if you're about right here on Blog Talk Radio, Wednesdays, 2 p.m., at Patriots of Britain, Paul Weston might be joining the program.
Yes, indeed.
And now he's got to join. He's got to join now. I'm going to have to bug him. Guess what, Paul?
Yeah, you're on.
By the way, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I think I think for those of you who want to tune in to the Pegida UK Blog Talk Radio show, I think Kel will probably have a link to put into the chat room, or are we just advising? We are just advising people that it is on Pegida UK Blog Talk Radio at the minute. Do we have a link?
Yeah, I'm just going to bring it up right now. And where did that bad boy go? Here we are. And I got their page. And it's loading. The interweb is being very slow today. Driving me crazy. But
the internet. Yeah.
You don't watch much TV, don't you?
I do or I don't.
There's a character out there. You know what? I don't watch much TV myself, but there's a character on some sitcom, and he always calls it the interweb.
The interweb. I can't think who that is, but I've heard it described in several ways.
Well, you know what? At least interweb.
Yeah.
You've got to give me a little credit. I understood what static meant, and I know to spell internet with a capital I.
Fair enough, Cal. I didn't. Never mind. When Confucius he say, "When in hole, stop digging." So, yes, of course you did. So no problem there. Great. So we got the link for Pegida UK on Wednesday. So anybody who can tune into that, please do. And that was my summary of the day. But we had a lot more people than we thought we might get. We did think that because of the weather, we might have actually had a complete washout. But we did get, in my estimation, about 700 or 800 people. Some people say it was a bit less, but we did really well, all things considered. And for those people who turned out, I'd like to say thank you very much. It's great to see turn out in that kind of weather for a very worthy cause. In fact, I'd say there's no cause more worthy than the counter jihad cause at this point. So it was good to see a lot of people there.
Sorry.
You're right there, Kel.
No, something happened there. That was weird.
Okay.
But I am very much looking forward, and I hope that Rupley TV will continue to cover Pegida and post it for us. I watched the entire. It's 2.5 hours, folks, but I watched the entire 2.5 hours, looking for Tim, actually.
Well, I was so well wrapped up in my Harley Davidson jacket, which is sort of pulled up around around my face, and I was wearing a very fetching bobble hat as well. So I'm not surprised. Yes, I know. I'm not surprised you didn't see me, or didn't recognise me, because it was absolutely terrible weather.
Well, what the hell is a bubble hat?
A bobble hat. Oh well. Yes, I do apologise. You don't have these things, I suppose, over in Canada. Well, it's like a little woolly hat with a little bobble on the top, and they call them bobble hats, and they're very popular over here.
Is that like a
why do I wish I hadn't started explaining this?
But you have a little pom pom on top.
Yeah, that's it. You got it. Yeah, you got it. Oh, well, I'm glad to have been the cause of so much amusement, Kel. It warms the cockles of my heart. I am so pleased. I'm so pleased that you
We're going to
found
name
this
the next
amusing.
storm Hurricane Tim. He wears a bubble hat. Jeez.
Well, yes.
Are we ever
yeah.
going to ever do a show where I don't find myself in gales of laughter? But really,
Kel, when you laugh, the sun shines, the birds chirp in the tree, and the flowers pop out of the ground. So we all like to hear you laugh. So there's no problem with that at all.
Tim wears a hat with a pom pom.
Yes, well, perhaps we can move on to the next subject. Have you ever felt sorry when you introduce something into a topic and then wish you hadn't?
Bubble hat.
Oh dear.
And pray tell, what color is your bubble hat?
Well, I tell you what. It was a sort of grey. Oh, darn! No, come on. All right, it was just a grey colour, nothing special. You will actually see a perfect example of one of these bubble hats in the photograph that is in the Fahrenheit211.net picture of the Pegida March. There's a gentleman in the foreground who is cheerfully displaying the aforementioned item of headwear. It's not me, I have to say. It's somebody else. But that is what a bobble hat looks like. So, if you've got nothing better to do for the next hour or two, you can peruse that photograph until you find the person I'm talking about. But in fact, you should have something better to do in the next hour and a bit, because we are going to be talking about the Complete Infidel's Guide to ISIS, aren't we, Kel? This is a book, as regular listeners will know, by Robert Spencer. Again, another book, if you get the opportunity, you should buy Amazon if you can, or get it on Kindle. And tonight, Kel, what are we going to be covering in that book?
I'm looking at the photo. I see the guy. He's got a great bubble hat.
Do you think we could possibly move on from the bubble hat? Oh, I really wish I hadn't mentioned this. Dear. All right. Today, in the Complete Infidel's Guide to ISIS by Robert Spencer, we are going to be covering Chapter 5, which is called Inside the Islamic State. And perhaps, Kel, you could give us a little bit of a summary to start us off.
Why not? Let's give it a shot.
Oh, dear, oh dear.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have a show for you. And what we're going to do is that we're going to aid and abet the Islamic State by sending them plane loads of bubble hats.
Well, yeah. I mean, they...
It does get cold, there in their caliphate regions.
Well, it does. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, although most people think of places like Iraq and Syria being hot countries, at this time of year, it does get extremely cold. And having spent a lot of my life in the Middle East, I can vouch for just how cold it gets, even in places which are much nearer the equator. At night time, it gets very cold indeed. Anyway, I digress. So we'll send them a few bobble hats. I've made a note, and we'll ship them over a container load of bobble hats at the earliest opportunity. And but inside the Islamic State, it's not the kind of place that you want to go to on your holidays, is it?
Oh, it's a horrible situation in that. My goodness, I can understand some of the migration issues. There are genuine refugees coming out of that area. These are Christians, of course, that are fleeing for their lives. I don't know if there's any Jews left there anymore. But we do have the Muslims fleeing as well, trying to get away from the devout Mohammedans. But it's a horrible situation, people. You know, you take a look at the daily life in an Islamic State, it's pretty damned clear why as many people have chosen to flee rather than stay. Because who on earth would want to try to adapt to these new overlords? It is horrendous. There are areas that Saddam Hussein, for example, in Iraq, when he reigned his iron fist, he was benign compared to what they're seeing in Iraq now. They've already claimed Iraq, haven't they, Tim?
Well, they certainly have. I mean, the large swathes of Iraq and Syria have fallen under the control of the Islamic State, and so far they have managed to hold on to an awful lot of the territory that they've captured, largely because they have been allowed to by the very powers that could have stopped them. I mean, let's not forget that when we were called on to defend Kuwait, within a matter of weeks, this is back in 1990, within a matter of weeks, over 500,000 men were dispatched from the United States in order to build up an army that would be capable of defeating Saddam Hussein's forces. Yeah. Okay, so when the political will is there is certainly the military prowess and the logistical capability to mount the kind of the warfare that you need on a level to defeat something like ISIS. ISIS might have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 men, but they're going to be no match for 500,000 Americans. And even if the Americans weren't there, then the Russian army comprises, I think it's a good couple of million men, and Vladimir Putin could, if he chose, mount an offensive on Iraq and Syria and completely obliterate the threat of ISIS in a very short period of time. Now that's not happening because the people at the top in both America and Russia have got their own agendas for not actually doing that. I mean, we look at it and we think, how can this inhumanity persist? But they've obviously got their own agendas. I mean, I personally think that the Obama administration doesn't do anything about it because it doesn't want to offend Muslims. I think Putin doesn't do anything about it because he's biding his time, waiting for the best political moment to strike. I think he's perfectly capable of wiping out the Islamic State on his own. But while all this goes on, it's very, very unpleasant for the people who are actually there, who are under the thumb of a very oppressive regime indeed. And even if you don't like what Bashar Assad does in Syria,
right.
The comparison with what ISIS are doing is 100 times worse.
Well,
go on.
Yeah, let's explore being inside an Islamic State-held territory. And if you guys are planning a vacation, we have a little help and aid for you. There are some guidelines that you must follow. But first of all, we do have to address the fact that there are a lot of people under the thumb of the Islamic State, and they are not in a position to flee. A lot of them refuse to flee. They have homes and businesses, and they sometimes see regimes come and go, and they hope for a better one to come along, a more benign one. But you know what? It is a horrendous condition to live under, and that breaking the law in the Islamic State can get you lashed or even beheaded. So, folks, if you're planning a relaxing vacation in the Caliphate, now you make sure you abide by the local laws. Now, here's a few for you to keep in mind. Now, keep in mind, like I say, women must cover their entire body except face and hands. And now this is according to some reports, and that maybe they might have to cover their faces as well. Women may not wear makeup or sit in a chair. Okay. Women may not leave the house without male accompanying them. Men may not cut their hair, put gel in it, or wear it in a quote-unquote modern style. And unfortunately, barbershops have been shut down, as have beauty salons for women. You may not refer to the ruling group as Daesh. Only women can sew clothing to women. Men may not wear low-hanging jeans. Okay, they got a point there. Taxi drivers who overcharge are guilty of theft. They could have a hand amputated or worse. So Uber cabs, way to go, babies. Thieves will have their hands amputated as per Quran chapter 5, verse 38. Blackmailers will face killing or crucifixion as per the Quran chapter 5, verse 33. And, of course, drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes are forbidden. There are to be no political parties or armed groups allowed other than the Islamic State. Those who leave Islam are to be killed. Sharia is the sole law of the land. Graves and shrines are forbidden and are to be destroyed. Oh, God, Tim, this one. Those wearing soccer jerseys will receive 80 lashes. So this must resonate with you in particular, Tim, because you have the rugby teams over there. And so, Tim, if you're going to an Islamic State, leave your rugby jersey at home.
Well, there are those who say that anybody wearing the soccer jersey with the logo of Newcastle United on it might well deserve 80 lashes. But leaving that aside, I can hear somebody in the background giving a sharp intake of breath there. But the laws are, or the rules that Keller's described, they're very draconian, and they are designed to keep the population under a rule of fear, if not outright terror. And they're designed in such a way that anybody who deviates from that is likely to find themselves in severe trouble, if not actually killed. So no fun at all. But I mean, this is why we in the West should really consider ourselves so lucky. I mean, many of us have been brought up with knowing nothing else other than the peaceful, prosperous democratic societies of the United States and Canada and Europe and other places in the Western world. We have had so much peace and prosperity that we have forgotten just how bad it can be. And if there's an upside to this, it's the Islamic State reminds us just how bad it can be if you don't have a democracy like we have in the West. It's not perfect. I'd be the last person to say that the democratic structures that we have, based as they are on Judeo-Christian morals, ethics, values, I'd be the last person to say they're perfect, but they're certainly the best framework yet devised for the advancement of humanity, bar none. Certainly far better than Islam could ever produce. Islam has a very poor civilizational model, and the Islamic State is a perfect example of what happens when Islam is allowed to run riot in a state driven by who have decided that they must live by the laws of the Islamic false prophet of the 7th century. Not a pleasant place to be at all. But all these rules that you've listed are Islamically correct rules. I mean, this is why people who say that Islamic State doesn't follow the dictates of Islam, they're all completely deluded. These rules are derived from the Quran and represent, what is considered Islamically pure.
Well, folks, the laughs just keep on coming because there are special rules for Christians. Now, as Tim and I mentioned earlier, that most of the Christians of the Islamic State domains, they pretty much fled or they were killed. And there was a nun from Mosul, and she remarked in June of 2014, all who are left there now are a few handicapped or sickly Christians. And the situation, of course, has deteriorated. But those who remain have to submit to the rules of Sharia, the Islamic State's rules mandating the subjugation of Christians are straight out of traditional Islamic law. Now, of course, in Sharia, Christians are allowed. Oh, get this, folks. Hey. So there's a little bit of benevolence going on here. In Sharia, Christians are allowed to live in Islam State as dhimmis, quote-unquote protected people, only if they submit to a regime of severe restrictions designed to mark their subordinate place in society and diffuse any challenge that Christianity might pose to Islam. If Christians disobey these rules, they are no longer protected, and the relationship between them and the Islamic authorities reverts to a state of violent hostility. So here we are, folks. Thus, in the Islamic State, Christians are forbidden to make any public display of their religion. All Christian worship has to take place behind closed doors. I'm even surprised they allow that one, Tim. They are not allowed to ring church bells. They cannot display the cross in public, including in markets and other areas where Christians might come into contact with Muslims, pray so loudly that Muslims could chance to hear their prayers, build new churches or repair old ones, make fun of Muslims or Islam. Look at that guy in the funny dress. Okay, you can't do that, Christians. Don't do that. Try to prevent anyone from converting from Christianity to Islam. Oh, my God. This is unbelievable. And I love this. This has nothing to do with Islam. Fight those who do not believe in Allah, nor in the latter day, nor do they prohibit what Allah and His apostle have prohibited, nor follow the religion of truth. Out of those who have been given the book until they pay the tax in acknowledgement of superiority, and they are in a state of subjection. And folks, I think you're quite familiar with that. We have smart listeners. What's our opening song? That's right. Chapter 9, verse 29. Oh.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. If you listen closely to the lyrics, you'll find that they follow very closely the edicts of chapter 9, verse 29, which in turn forms the basis of the Pact of Umar, which basically was a covenant between Christians and Muslims, where the Christians agreed that they would not do certain things. This is, we're going back to is it the 7th century? No, slightly later, I think. But anyway, sorry, go on. I was just going to say
Go on.
I was just going to say, I think it was slightly later than the 7th century, but it was a covenant between Muslims and Christians, whereby the Christians said, well, we agree that we will not do these things, and if we are caught doing these things, then you may treat us, with a certain degree of firmness, shall we say. And that was the only way in which the Christians could see themselves living in an Islamic state, other than converting to Islam or packing everything up and leaving their homeland and going to goodness knows where. So they accepted subjugation in this way, and it was subject to all these rules. So what you see in chapter 9, verse 29, or what you hear in the opening song of chapter 9, verse 29, reflects that, and these rules that the Islamic State have brought into play, they're all Islamically correct. They're all exactly as Islam had laid down for its followers more than 1,000 years ago. So again, those people who say it's nothing to do with Islam, they're all entirely mistaken, and that is why.
Well, there's just so much in here to cover. This is a rather large chapter, but I was rather fascinated with the issue of the daily life in the Caliphate, and it is interesting. We're going to get to their so-called constitution, for lack of a better word, in a moment, but the daily life living under a caliphate is horrifying. And they are deadly serious about their caliphate in that it is indeed one of the strangest states ever created. The Islamic State wants to force all humanity to believe in its vision of a religious and social utopia existing in the first days of Islam. Now, folks, this is very important to understand. The Islamic State wants to force all humanity to believe in its vision of a religious and social utopia existing in the first days of Islam. And it's quite a long passage, but I think this in itself is worthy of discussion. And when you hear the apologists out there telling you this has nothing to do with Islam, what it does, the Islamic State has everything to do with Islam, and they're trying to return it to its pure form. This is a pure Islam. They have no qualms about how to treat women, i.e., as chattels, forbidden to leave the house unless accompanied by a male relative. Yeah. They have no qualms about punishing people deemed to be pagans, like the Yazidis. They have no qualms about slavery. They have no qualms about punishments such as beheadings, amputations, and flogging. That is the norm. All of those not pledging allegiance to the caliphate declared by its leader, al-Bakr al-Baghdadi, on June 29th of last year, are considered the enemies. And they were deadly serious. And I'm not being tongue-in-cheek. They are deadly serious. There was a report out of the New York Times in May of 2015 in which the Islamic State in the Caliphate put out a want ad. Okay, have you ever been down on your luck? Have you ever wanted to maybe obtain that dream job? Have you been pursuing your want ads in your daily newspaper? Do you want to be an RC driver? Do you want to be a chef? Do you want to work at McDonald's? Go to your classifieds. Well, this is a classified ad from Islamic State. Quote, job seekers in Saudi Arabia who have a strong constitution and endorse strict Islamic law might consider new opportunities, carrying out public beheadings and amputating the hands of convicted thieves. That was an ad. That's quote unquote. That was an ad in one of their dailies. Now, the kingdom was advertising 8 executioner positions because of an uptick in beheadings and, quote, a scarcity, my apologies, of qualified swordsmen in some parts of the country. The Times did report that the amputation of thieves' hands are rarely carried out, and that's not because that punishment isn't clearly established in Sharia and thus in the laws of Saudi Arabia, but because, quote unquote, the judges consider it distasteful. The judges in the Islamic State, though, they're not so squeamish. Tim, unbelievable.
Oh, well,
And
only too believable, I would say, unfortunately, because it's once again it's all Islamically sanctioned, and that indeed was the punishment for people who were guilty of these so-called crimes back in the 7th century. And although they may not carry them out today to such a great extent in Saudi Arabia, yep, you're absolutely right. The Islamic State looks to the example of the false prophet Muhammad as to what should and shouldn't be done. And if it's in the Quran or the Hadith or the Surah, then it's Islam, and it's perfectly okay to follow it. But more importantly than that, if it's not in the Quran, not in the Hadith, not in the Surah, and it's not Islam, then it is to be profoundly discouraged. So executing or chopping people's hands off does tend to focus their mind a bit on what it is that the Islamic State requires. Nothing focuses your mind so much as having your bits chopped off with a sword. So yeah, you can certainly see where they're coming from. If you wanted to enforce the rule of law and make sure that as many people as possible followed it, then a series of draconian punishments of this nature are just what you need. Of course, you know, when the time comes that you might want to live in peace as equals, Islam doesn't really have a place in that kind of society. It doesn't recognize that people are equal in the way that we do, and consequently, the differences between the way we do things and the way the Islamic State does things is completely different.
You know what? We're past the top of the first hour, and I was wondering, do you need to take a break so that we can all refresh our coffees, teas, or beverage of choice, grab a snack? Because
we could certainly take a short break if you've got a bit of music in mind.
I do. And just before we take that break, though, just something that we should also advise, that if you're planning a vacation to an Islamic State held territory, if you're a smoker, don't do it. Unfortunately, because every smoker should be aware that with every cigarette he smokes, in a state of trance and vanity, is disobeying God. And so smokers, and that includes you too, e-smokers, no smoking. No fake smoking, no tobacco smoking. So just keep that in mind. I hope you guys are taking notes of all this. Come on, because we're all going to Islamic State. Yeah. This ain't your Disney World anymore, folks, but...
Well, yeah.
We'll take that break and see everybody back here in 3.5 moments. So, jeez, I'm making myself punch drunk, Tim, again. back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that by the very lovely Bette Midler. And you are listening to RFB Radio, heard here on Red Fox Radio and other very cool devices. We are your host. I'm Kel Fritzy, and Tim is Tim Button. We thank you all very much for being here. And we want to thank people that join us in the chat room and who listen in on other devices, who listen in on archive, and special mention to so many others. We have Jenna and Gary listening. We have Moving Forward listening. Of course, the Underground Professor, the how do you say that word? Imitable. Bo? Tim. Tim doesn't know either. But
no.
then again,
sorry, I
just
had a pop-up. Yeah, don't. I'll tell you what, despite your your attitude, your derisory attitude towards my bubble hat, of which I'm very proud, I have to say. I am going to just briefly promote something which I think the listeners will be interested in. If they haven't already heard about it, there's a very interesting article on the Gates of Vienna called "The Alienort Way," and it's a little short story by a chap called Matthew Bracken, and it describes what happens when a society is opened up to an invasion, as it were, of people who don't hold to the same traditions. Now, the reason I'm mentioning it is because not only because it's a great story on its own, but because our very own Kel Fritzy actually recorded this story and read it out on her program a couple of weeks ago. And I'm putting the links in to both the Alienort Way story, which is from thegatesofvienna.net, and the reading that our very own Miss Fritzy did of that story. And it's well worth listening to. Personally, I think Kel's voice lends itself to this kind of storytelling very well. And I think it's only fair that we briefly mention it. I know it hasn't got anything to do with the our main topic is tonight, but I think it was so impressive, I thought I just had to put that in. Hope you don't mind, Kel.
And not at all. And the people that are joining us in the chat room were there that night as well. And that includes Bigfoot and one of my very special guests, LSU Jeff, Vito of Radio Jihad Network, and Roxanne. And the people I mentioned in the studio, like Jenna and Gary and Movin' and Underground Professor, they heard that too. And people that help get the show out, like Sue from New Mexico, and Michelle and Dan. We have so many people that help out with this show, and they listen to that. And Tim, thank you very much. That took a heck of a lot of editing to do, by the way, folks.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you while you were in the middle of doing those acknowledgements.
Oh no.
It's entirely my fault because I had a pop-up come and just completely destroyed the sound for me, so I hadn't realised that that's what I'd done. So apologies to everybody in the listening in the chat room.
No worries. We understand. You weren't wearing your bubble hat.
Yeah. Oh, pack it in right now, Miss Fritzy. Well, there will be trouble.
I'm going to have episodes of fun with that one. No, I'm incorrigible. But Tim, that's very kind of you. Thank you so very much. It's quite a tale. And for those who listen in archive and perhaps had not had a chance to have listened to that show, please do. It is Blog Talk Radio, courtesy of Red Fox Radio, and the episode is entitled "Invasion of the Orcs." And yeah, that was quite a tale. And Tim, you're a real gem. Thanks for that.
You're very welcome. It is well worth listening to if you have the time to listen to it, ladies and gentlemen, and it's well worth reading the original in the Gates of Vienna website if you haven't got a chance to listen to Kel. But okay, I just thought it was so good I had to put that in. So there it is.
Absolutely. Oh, I have put it into a standalone MP3, like I say, after much editing. So I might use that as an encore down the road for folks. But you know what, Tim? Islamic State. Inside the Islamic State. See, a lot of people see them just running around and beheading people, but it's actually quite a governmental entity. They have, for example, they even have a consumer protection office, Tim. Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no self-respecting state is without a consumer protection office. But, I mean, it just goes to show all those people who say that Islamic State is neither Islamic or a state, as our politicians were saying only a few months ago, they're entirely wrong. The Islamic State, besides being obviously Islamic, as we've endeavoured to show by the edicts that it lives by, it has all the trappings of a state, in so much as it has its own government hierarchy, a consumer protection office, as Kel says. They issue their own passports. All right, it's not a state that is recognised by the United Nations. But for all that, it is a fully functioning state. And the every day that goes by where it is not attacked and rolled back, it will continue to expand. I mean, I know that sounds obvious, but they have a lot of money at their disposal, a lot of manpower, and a lot of commitment from the people who are there. And they intend not only to consolidate the land they have in Iraq and Syria, but to expand Islamic State all over the world, effectively. That is their goal. So we either do something about it now, or we have the job made 10 times harder for us down the road, and it won't be us that's handling it. It'll be our children and our grandchildren that are bearing the brunt of it. But we could do something about it now, today, if only the political will were there. Office. It sounds like the ideal place. I wonder if they've got a multicultural diversity office as well. I bet they haven't.
LGBT chapter?
Yeah,
office?
Quite so.
God. Oh, it's true though, and that's what I mean. Is that people see the bloodlust and the terror, the coercion. But yeah, you're right. They are trying to establish themselves as a credible political institution as well. Now, you know, with the departments they have established, they really have created a state, and I don't think anybody can deny that. You know, this consumer protection office business, for example, if one has a restaurant and they came to check it out and the meat was bad or it was exposed to dirt or sunlight, they would take expired material and dispose of it as a sanitary action. And folks, if you believe they wash their hands too, but actually they would in this case. They would engage in sanitary action. They follow up on these issues completely with the departments they have created, and unbelievable. This is reported by Abu Saif, an opponent of the Islamic State. Opponent. I think I said opponent. An opponent of the Islamic State. And Jenna's sending me messages. She thinks I'm on drugs. But no, Jenna. I mean, this is just me. I'm just crazy all the time. But it is true. Like you look at the hierarchy in this government. We have the Caliph, of course, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, but we have a deputy of the Caliph, overseer of the Iraqi provinces, Abu Muslim al-Turkmeni, but he was killed in December of 2014, so he had to be replaced. But they have the deputy to the caliph overseer of the Syrian provinces. They have a war minister, a senior military commander, director of military operations in Syria. They have a finance minister, minister of general coordination, minister of general management, minister for social services, minister of general security, governor of Baghdad, governor of Anbar, and chief of the military council, governor of the border provinces, governor of the South and Central Euphrates, governor of Kirkuk, governor of Raqqa, of Aleppo, of Deir el, my apologies for this one, folks, a governor of Deir ez-Zor, governor of Homs, governor of Saladin, and they have a chief spokesman, and they have a chief media operator, chief of media operations, and that would be Ahmed Abar Samra. Oh, this is getting more and more freaky here, Tim. They have a minister for foreign fighters and suicide bombers. They have a Sharia official. They have a coordinator for the affairs of martyrs and women. They have a minister for explosives, a minister for weapons, and a minister of prisoners.
I know. Well, the thing that makes me laugh about this, I know a ministry of suicide bombers. Now, presumably, there's a guy there that coordinates all the suicide bombing classes. You can just imagine it, can't you? Standing up in front of the class and saying, "Now pay attention, class. I'm only going to show you this once." Yeah, as they say, you don't see these ministries yet in Western democracies, but give it time. I say, give it time.
We have Flycatcher joining us, and hey, Fly, it's great to see you. And it's just part of the reason why I'm laughing too is because they have a minister, like what would appear to be a minister of hygiene. Hygiene is not really their strongest suit, as we know. And I have been in businesses where the proprietors are of the Islamic persuasion, and for the most part, pretty good. But some of the stores, like the corner stores, the little shops I go into, they really don't know how to sweep those floors very tidily, as it were. And hygiene is not a strong point with them at all.
Well, this comes as no surprise for anybody that's familiar with Muslim restaurants. I remember seeing it was a cartoon, but it was quite elaborately drawn, and it was a behind-the-scenes picture of an Egyptian restaurant run by Muslims. And there were like two sides of this cartoon, and one was the impeccable customer area where they were seated at these wonderful tables with white tablecloths, and there was like everything you'd expect out of a top class restaurant was on one side of the door, and you went through the other side of the door, and it was just chaos with flies all flying around over these carcasses of dead dogs and stuff like that, and you can just imagine it. I mean, it is what you find quite frequently when you go behind the scenes in a Muslim-run restaurant. I'm not saying every Muslim-run restaurant is like that, but we have a lot of them that are uncovered on a daily basis in this country, and that's where they know that they are supposed to comply with health and safety and hygiene laws. Now, when you go to a typical Muslim country, they're not bound by these laws in the same way. I mean, if you die of food poisoning, then it's obviously the will of Allah, and you shouldn't complain about it. But the concept of hygiene is somewhat lacking, shall we say, and to hear what it's like in the Islamic State is no surprise.
And Jenna brought up a good point, and they don't. The women don't bathe while they're menstruating. I don't really quite understand that one. I find that particularly horrifying. But they do have rather strange ablution habits, and you're not allowed to bathe at such and such a time, or in such and such a situation, and your ablutions are, if you are engaging in a particular, let's just use the word ablution, you have to use your left hand to wipe, and the concept of toilet paper is kind of lost to them. And they don't believe in hand washing after that particular ablution.
Yeah, this is definitely putting me off my spring break to the Islamic State. I went down to local travel agents this week, and they were doing some special offers. There and back to the Islamic State for only £4.75. Complete with optional beheading at the end of the holiday, and it's really putting me off these stories of hygiene that is running below par out there. So I think maybe I'll leave it for another few months until they get their act together.
We're going to move into the final segment in a moment, but Flycatch once again brings up a very good point, and that what we're seeing in Germany and elsewhere in Europe is that the local authorities have to put up signage in public places asking the migrants, please do not urinate or defecate in public places, and that includes the swimming pools. Like they really don't understand the concept. And I was watching this YouTube video. Either Roxanne sent it to me or Michelle sent it to me. And it was a video about a migrant family that had settled in Europe, and they were all very, very happy. They were, yammering rather animatedly about, what is this? What is this? And they were so excited with Wi-Fi and cell phones. They already had their cell phones, though. Come on, folks. Migrants taking selfies. Hello. But this one particular family that they focused on had been ensconced in this apartment, and the mother, I think they had 4 kids, the mother and the father and 4 kids. And the 4 kids were running around like, what is this? What is this? Oh, that's a stove. What's it do? What's it do? They had never seen appliances in their life. And their so-called, well-meaning social worker was showing them about the apartment and explaining how to use the toilet. And this is how you use the toilet. Here's the lid. You sit on this, and you hit this lever when you're done. And they were like, And so this, it's one of those feel-good. It's supposed to be one of those feel-good stories, Tim. Because the nice rosy music is playing in the background, like, oh, look at us, we're so great. Look what we've done for this beautiful family who don't even know how to use a toilet. So nice, flowery music in the background. And then they take a break, and then they go back, and the migrant woman, she's on her cell phone, and she's talking with, I don't know, her sister, I don't know who. And she's saying, oh, yeah, you won't believe it here. And the sister says, where do you cook your food? Do they have a fireplace there? Like, well, a fire pit is what she meant, because, well, they don't have fireplaces. The sister, I guess, who she was speaking to, I don't know, like I say, was asking, where is your fire pit? And the woman, lounging on the couch, talking to whoever it was in the old country, she says, oh, no. They have what they call an electric stove. And the person she's speaking with is, what? An electric stove? Like, these are the savages that we are welcoming into the West, Tim. Oh.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's you might say, well, okay, maybe some of the things that we do are new to them. But once they've had them explained to them, there shouldn't really be any problem. We expect them to behave in a certain way while they're guests in our country. We have a saying, of course, which is when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And the idea is that you show deference to your hosts by falling in line with their customs and traditions. You don't go out of your way to make life difficult for them. You don't go out of your way to insult hosts. But these people, even when they're told how they might best fit in and integrate and assimilate and all this kind of thing, they have no intention at all of doing anything like that. They will pursue their own way of doing things, despite being told that that's not acceptable in the host country. It shows an arrogance and contempt that is peculiar to the Muslim mindset. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, really, at the levels of aggression and obstinance and psychopathy, one might almost say, psychopathic behaviour. Because if you've got a deity that epitomizes aggressive, psychopathic and paedophile behaviour, and a prophet who indulges in aggressive, psychopathic and paedophile behaviour, and he's considered to be a perfect man, then it's hardly surprising that large numbers of the devout followers of that ideology demonstrate aggressive, psychopathic and paedophile behaviour to the detriment of everyone around them. And that's exactly what we're seeing in places like Germany.
Roxanne just put a link in the chat room, and I'm looking at it right now. And this comes from the New Observer. And it's a new German multicultural toilet because refugees, quote unquote, in Germany still find European toilets a mystery. They cannot use them despite being given pictogram instructions. And they are continuing to leave human excrement on bathroom floors and showers. And this is why Germany had to introduce a new multicultural toilet. It's got footrest on either side of the toilet because they're used to squatting. They're not used to sitting. It's very, very strange. But you know what? If we offended anybody, we don't apologize. You are listening to RFB Radio after all. We make no excuses. We are politically incorrect. And it's also a fact of life that we're literally dealing with savages from the 7th century, folks. So if you don't like it, change the channel. That's all I can suggest. But, Tim, in this chapter, Inside the Islamic State, right? Mm-hmm. We had a lot of them before the Islamic State was becoming what it was, what we recognize it to be as today. The United States had a lot of them, and in particular, Guantanamo Bay, right?
Uh-huh. I'm just trying to see where you're going with this. But
yep. On page 160, folks, and we do encourage you to get your own study guide, and the link to obtain it is right there in the show notes.
Right. Yes.
But, yeah, we had a lot of these people. We had Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who is now the caliph. He was in custody, U.S. custody. Who else did we have in U.S. custody? Adan, Ismail, Najan these names. Balawi, a.k.a. Abdu Rahim al-Balawi.
Like they say AKA, as if his also known as name is going to be much more simple than his real name. If they said something like Adnan Ismail Najem al-Balawi, AKA Slasher or something like that, it would make so much more sense. But they've got Adnan Ismail Najem al-Balawi, AKA Abu Abed Abdul Rahman al-Balawi. Like that's an improvement, you know. It just makes me laugh. Personally, I think Slasher is a much better nickname.
Well, note to the Islamic State, could you AKA yourselves as John Smith in the future? It would make our lives that much easier. But this dude that was in custody, he is now the Islamic State military chief who planned the conquest of Mosul. Who else did we have in custody? Hajj Bakr, Samir Abed Mohammed Al Kilo Kilfawi. Tim, you read the names and I'll read the titles, okay?
I think you should give this up, Cal, because I can hear you're gradually covering your screen in layers of spit when you're trying to get these names out. And you know, to be fair, they're really difficult, some of these names. But the point is that an awful lot of the Islamic State senior leadership. When Kel says we had them, what she means is they were actually in detention in various places. Certainly
in the United States.
Some of them, or in Guantanamo or something like that. And they were let go, and they were let go at a time when the war against the West, which is being waged by Islam, is not only showing no signs of abating, but is actually accelerating. So it was absolute criminal foolhardiness to let these people go. But that's exactly what the Obama administration did. Yes, Kel, if you want to, I mean, there's about 10 names on this list. And rather than run the risk of short-circuiting your computer as you're trying to pronounce these names, maybe we could move on to go. So go on. No, I'm only kidding. They are difficult names to pronounce, and I mean, all we really need to know is that the Obama administration let a lot of these people go, and they're still letting them go, and to this day they are releasing people who never ought to be released while we've got this war in progress.
Well, it's just the titles that they hold within the Islamic State political office. Like, we know Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is the caliph, but we have, dear old Adnan Ismail Najem al-Balawi. He is the Islamic State military chief who planned the conquest of Mosul. We have Haji Bakr. He is the assistant to the caliph, and he is the overseer of Syrian operations. We have Abu Lawi, pardon me, Minister of General Security. Now, look at these titles, folks. Don't these seem a little respectable? But then it gets a little better. Abu Qasim. He is the Minister for Foreign Fighters and Suicide Bombers. They have a minister for foreign fighters and suicide bombers, folks. Oh, it gets better and better. Abu Suja. He is the coordinator for the affairs of martyrs and women. And then we have Abu Abdul Salim, a.k.a. Abu Muhammad Al Swedawi. This dude is the governor of Anbar and head of the military council.
Well, when your AKA is even worse than your original name, it seems, it seems pointless. It's like me saying, well, my given name is Tim Burton, but I decided I want to be known as Abu Mohammed Al Swedawi Al Abu Abed Abdul Rahman Al Balawi, and that's some kind of improvement. I mean, if I wanted to change my name to something more memorable, I would choose something like Butch, or even, I don't know, Cat Strangler. With
a 101 behind there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just seems absolutely crazy that you choose an AKA name that's even worse than your given name was. But there you go. I guess it must be a different concept in Islamic culture. they probably say to each other, "Oh, my given name's Abdul, but I'm going to call myself," and there's about 26 words that that follow the AKA. But you would think an AKA would simplify things, but apparently not in the Islamic culture.
They must have twice as letters in their alphabet as we do in ours, I swear.
Well, they've got letters. How do you pronounce spit in Arabic? Because they seem to do a lot of that when they're pronouncing some of their words, and that noise they have that hawks like you're hawking up half a halibut in your throat, like that. And that's probably got a pictorial representation in the Arabic language, and it sounds like you're hawking up half a halibut. Anyway, I digress.
They pronounce spit. Apparently, they pronounce spit as Basak.
Oh right.
Basak.
Fair enough.
Me and my Google. You know what though? This one's a little easier. Abu Sima. This dude is the minister for weapons. Oh, okay. And of course, we have the chief spokesman, Abu Muhammad Al Adnani. And these are all who have been released from American prisons. They were in American detention, and they were let go. And these are senior players in the Islamic State's leadership. Unbelievable, Tim.
Well, if you conduct your foreign policy on the basis that Islam really is a religion of peace, then you're going to make all sorts of ridiculous decisions which are going to have an adverse effect on the security of your country. And this is what's happening. The not just the Obama administration, but the political elites in pretty much every Western society are taking the view that they're going to deal in fantasy rather than reality when it comes to Islam. And so they say things, well, Islam can't possibly have anything to do with what we're seeing. So all these nice, kind Muslims that we seem to have accidentally locked up in the United States or wherever it is, we'll release them and, we'll give them a good talking to, and I'm sure they'll see how wonderful it is in Western democracies, and they won't offend again. That's what happens when you deal in fantasy rather than reality. In reality, these are people who are sworn enemies, and when they get the opportunity, they will wage war on us, and they will kill hundreds upon hundreds of Western citizens whenever they get the opportunity. And it's absolutely criminal foolhardiness to release them when the war is going on and shows every sign of accelerating rather than being contained. If you'd landed here, if you just landed on this planet from Mars, right, and you were looking at what the various political elites were doing, you just would never be able to understand it because none of it would make any sense at all. But I mean, we understand it. We know it's because the political elites are not taking reality into account when they're formulating their domestic and foreign policies, and that's why we see the kind of ridiculous scenarios that we do. And
it's just nuts.
that you've just outlined.
No, a lot of people, they associate the fact that Islamic State is male-oriented. Well, of course it is, but they have their donkeys, and AKA their women. And the women are just as, like the jihadi women, they're just as active in this, in that they are engaged in recruitment. They have Islamic State. It's not only young Muslim males that they're attracting from all over the globe. They're attracting women as well who want to become jihadi brides. And these jihadi brides are more than willing to submit to the will of Allah as any way they see fit. Now, you had cases in Britain. We've had cases in Canada. The United States certainly has had their share of cases where these girls are running off, and they are joining the Islamic State. There is some are trying to run away as young as the age of 13. It's believable.
Well, it's a complicated subject because there are various different driving forces that encourage people to go over there. For one thing, young people are often drawn to certain scenarios out of a sense of adventure. I'm sure that's part of it, and a sense of rebellion. You know, when you're a teenager, it's a natural thing to do, to rebel against your parental the parental guidance that you've been forced to labour under since you were born. And you know, lots of kids look for a means of demonstrating that rebelliousness. So I'm sure that's part of it. But the other thing, of course, is that if you are brought up in Islam, you recognise immediately that what the Islamic State is doing is operating a very pure form of Islam. And you look at what your parents are doing, they've tried to assimilate and integrate for the previous 20 years in a Western country, and you know, maybe they've done reasonably well in assimilating and integrating, because not every Muslim is a terrorist. We all accept that, and there are some Muslims who try very hard, first generation Muslims who've come over to Western countries who, to be fair, have tried very hard to assimilate and integrate, and in many cases they've been successful. But the young children look at what their parents are doing and they say, well, look, you're not following the true version of Islam like the Islamic State is. You know, I've got my whole life ahead of me. I want to be practicing the true version of Islam. And as one of the things we noticed when we were talking about the various job descriptions in the structure of the Islamic State was they've got a very good media team. And they produce some very slick videos, which they put out on all the social media sites like Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and all the social media sites that have sprung up in the last 10 years or so. They have a very strong presence there, and they know that young people frequent these sites, and they present this pure version of Islam to them. It's hardly surprising that in the absence of any coordinated effort to stop them, that they decide that it's going to be a lot more fun to go and live in a truly Islamic state like they have in Iraq and Syria. But I mean, I oversimplify things because obviously there's a lot of complication. It isn't quite as straightforward as I make it out. And people might well go for different reasons, but that has to be a large part of it. If you are brought up with Islam and you understand what a good Islamic life should be led like, how a good Islamic life should be led, then the Islamic State has obviously got a lot to attract you, because it doesn't matter what the political elites, the non-Muslim political elites say. They might say, oh, it has nothing to do with Islam. You know, you think young kids are going to take any notice of what non-Muslim leaders say? Of course they're not. They're going to look at what Islamic State is saying, which is we're running a true and pure version of Islam over here, come and join us. And they see a huge attraction in doing that. Of course, when they find out what the reality is on the ground, they naturally, some of them get a bit disillusioned. But the initial attraction is perhaps not that surprising.
You know, oh dear. Pardon me, folks. I'm still dealing with cat dander. But just in closing out, folks, don't be drawn into a false narrative in that those joining Islamic State are coming from broken homes and they're poor, disenfranchised, and have no opportunities in the West. That's furthest from the truth. They are recruiting everyday men, everyday women, but they are also bringing in the doctors, the lawyers. They are bringing in people that would otherwise be highly successful in the West that had ample opportunity to flourish in the West. It is the ideology that is attractive. It is not the disenfranchisement. It's not that at all. But we're closing out the show in a few moments here, Tim, and I've just got one more little thing here that I would like to share.
Mm-hmm.
Is that this is the Islamic State rules for journalists. Now, it is often difficult to get solid information out of the Islamic State, especially after the beheading of journalist James Foley. It became even tougher when the Islamic State issued rules for journalists in October 2014. Now, journalists must declare their allegiance and loyalty to the Caliph, submit all stories and photos to Islamic State media supervisors before sending them in to their employers, not work for any local or international satellite television network or offer any exclusives, not work for Al Arabiya, Al Jazeera, or other networks based in Muslim countries that have joined air or ground missions against the Islamic State, submit no anonymous pieces, publish nothing without the permission of the Islamic State Media Office, provide the Islamic State media offices with the names, addresses, and online handles of all those writing on blogs or social media about the Islamic State. Abide by local regulations when taking photos, accept the supervision of Islamic State media offices, knowing that violation of these rules could lead to suspension and punishment, accept any new rules or changes in rules for journalists, submit a license request to the Islamic State Media Office, and operate only with this license. And I think we did a pretty good job getting through that chapter, Tim. Oh, boy.
Well, we covered quite a lot of topics there. I mean, the bottom line is that, if you want to go on holiday this year, think long and hard before taking up that cheap offer to the Islamic State. You know, it might have bed and breakfast included, but if you sort of come back home with only one of your two hands, you know, there is a bit of a downside to it. So I personally would have to say, if you see one of these cheap offers, don't take it up. But yes,
right.
no, I think we've done quite a good job in highlighting some of the things that go on inside the Islamic State, why they go on the way they do, and what kind of reception people can expect if they actually end up in the Islamic State out of some kind of, if they think they're going to have a great time being part of a purely Islamic culture. Well, if you've been brought up in Western culture, you are going to be, for the large part, sadly disappointed, I think. However, that's that I think people need to know, because unless you really understand what your enemy is like and what drives him and how he's likely to react when things are imposed on your enemy, if you don't understand all that, then you're going to have great difficulty defeating your enemy. So I think it's not just this chapter; it's all the chapters we've covered, Kel, that I think help to give our listeners a good picture of what ISIS is really like. So hopefully you have enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you'll be coming back next week when we'll be covering chapter 6, which is about the caliphate, what it means and why it matters.
That's right. And ladies and gentlemen, do thank you so very much for joining us here at RFB Radio. And Tim and myself, we will also see you tomorrow night at Infidels Are Watching, courtesy of the Radio Jihad Network. Proprietor Vito Esposito graced our chat room this fine afternoon. And folks, just to say, please, cherish your air miles, and also remember, it is mass Islamity, and we must stop the insanity. You guys have a great...
Have I just got time to say
Like
the best
10
co-host
seconds.
and producer a red-blooded male could possibly wish for. I think I have. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you, Tim. You have a wonderful evening yourself, my dear man. I'll be speaking with you tomorrow.
Yes, indeed. Good night, Kel, and good night, everybody.
Tonight, the legend returns.
Derek Zoolander. Zoolander.
Why didn't we do this sooner?
I miss not knowing things with you.
Ben Stiller.
We're back.
Owen Wilson.
Yeah!
Will Ferrell.
It's like a dream, but for real.
Penelope Cruz and Kristen Wiig.
Amazing.
Spend Valentine's Day with Zoolander.
It's like a blind date, only neither of us is blind. Unless you are blind, in which case you can't hear my voice anyway.
Zoolander 2, directed by Ben Stiller, starts tonight at 7 p.m. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.